All right, some super crazy stuff is going on and it's trending right now on Twitter, and I want to talk about it. But before I do, please take a second right now while we have this connection on this platform to subscribe to me on Rockfin, on BitChute, on Odyssey, all my social media pages, and specifically contact me through highimpactflix.com. That's my website. And then subscribe over on the right-hand side, the red subscribe button. Just all you have to do is put your name and your email address and get on my email list. It's free. I don't bother anybody. Matter of fact, if you ask people who are on my email list, it's like, how come Brian doesn't email us anything? Because I only do it like once a month or once every 2 months, but I'll try to get better at that. I'm going to use that as an avenue to show you, what I've uploaded if you're interested in taking a look at the video or whatever. But anyway, contact me on all those alternative platforms while we have this connection. Roll the intro. Hey guys, before we get into today's video, I want to give a real quick shout out to today's sponsor, Virtual Shield VPN. And the reason I promote it, guys, is because I use it every single day and I know that it works, and I've proven it in videos in the past. If you use the link in the description, you're going to get 50% off, and that's going to help you protect your identity, your activity, and your location anytime you're surfing on the net. That link is in the description below. All right, I couldn't not do this video right here. This is hilarious, astoundingly hilarious. This is trending right now on Twitter as I do this live stream. And this is what they want you to know. They want you to know there is no evidence of planned organized partial shutdown, mass formation psychosis. And I suspect that if you use these three words in our very near future, you will probably start being banned from platforms. Just start saying mass formation psychosis. Oh, it's going to set off red flags, and then you're going to be censored. No evidence of planned organized partial shutdown, mass formation psychosis, according to Reuters and the Associated Press. So the fact checkers are on the case. They're going to sit here and tell you, and I'm not joking, this isn't hyperbole. They're going to tell you there's no such thing as the hive mind. There's no such thing as groupthink. There's no such thing as social conformity. There's no such thing as uncritical conformity. There's no such thing as the lemming mentality. Even though fake stream media uses words like this, when they condemned Donald Trump and people who supported Donald Trump, they would talk about the hive mind or the groupthink mentality or social conformity, or they are lemmings marching toward their own demise and they're destroying our democracy. Now, when mainstream media uses it, there's no outcry and the fact checkers don't get on the case. But when Robert Malone uses it, oh, now we got to talk about the fallacy, the fairy tale of something called mass formation psychosis. Never heard of it. Well, I don't know what you're talking about. You open up any psychology textbook, nothing says mass formation psychosis, and they get all exact with it. Okay, let's call it, how about mass psychosis? How about general psychosis? Does general psychosis exist? And we see from demonstrations and from experiments that they've done for centuries that there is such a thing as groupthink, where you lose your individuality and it gets taken over by the group mentality. They say, and this is Twitter, this is the fact checkers from Reuters and from the Associated Press, who are controlled by Vanguard, BlackRock, State Street. Mass formation psychosis is not an academic term recognized in the field of psychology. Oh, okay. Well, that just makes Robert Malone and Joe Rogan a liar then. All right, I'll take your word for it. Fact checkers, you are the gods. You are the gatekeepers. We must obey you. If you say it isn't so, then there it is. It's got the rubber stamp of approval on it. Nor is there evidence of any such phenomenon occurring during the COVID-19 planned organized partial shutdown of the U.S. economy in the second quarter, according to James Bullard from the St. Louis Federal Reserve, because that's what it truly is from their own lips. This isn't about a mass public health event. This is about a planned, organized, full shutdown of not just the U.S. economy, but all economies in the second, third, and fourth quarters. And you can see that by the transfer of wealth and power. The billionaires have become multi-billionaires, verging on, I mean, they're teetering on becoming trillionaires, if you can even believe that. Wrap your head around that number. While the rest of us lose our jobs, become poorer, mandates cause business closures, economic terrorism is sweeping across not only America, but the entire world. You can't do this because you don't have the COVID pass. And if you don't bow down at the altar of Jabbo so that we can ka-ching them, then you're not a part of society. Multiple experts in crowd psychology have told Reuters that this is hilarious. They're actually saying there is no evidence of any such phenomenon, says the experts in what? Crowd psychology. Wait a second. I thought you just said there's no such thing as mass formation psychosis, which is a metric of crowd psychology. There's something called crowd psychology. We're going to touch on those here in a real quick second, but I just want to mention there was a book that Gustave Le Bon put out in the 1800s. I think it was the late 1800s, 1895 or something like that, called The Crowd, A Study of the Popular Mind. And basically what he said was that crowds are not the sum of their individual parts, proposing that within crowds, there forms a new psychological entity. So individuals lose their individuality, their individual beliefs, their thoughts, their ideals, their ideas, and it gives way to the groupthink, uncritical thinking, the characteristics of which are determined by the radical unconsciousness of the crowd. And it is radical. It's radical if you think about it. If you think about it, you grew up with a certain set of beliefs and ideals and principles. And what we find is that people will give away those beliefs, ideas, and ideals and principles to the group, even though they know it's wrong. And that's where let's just, I'm going to go ahead and skip ahead here. But here's the Asch Conformity Experiment. This is just a brief summary of the Asch Conformity Experiment, which was carried out in the 1950s by a guy named Solomon Asch. It says the Asch Conformity Experiments were a series of psychological experiments. This is crowd psychology or group psychology conducted by Solomon Asch in the 1950s. Asch found that people were willing to ignore reality and give an incorrect answer in order to conform to the rest of the group. Let me pull up an image here and show you how ridiculous this is. This is an image where clearly anybody with any kind of brain cells going on in their cranium knows that this reference line right here, if you can see the reference line, this reference line right here is equal to line C. But in the Asch Conformity Experiment, they get the group to say, hey, the reference line is equal to A. And there's like, let's say there's 5 Confederates in the room, people who are actually in on the experiment. And then one person who's not in on it, he's just asked the question and he's just expected to give an honest answer from his own mind, from his own heart. And I don't remember what percentage of the time, but it's an alarming percentage of the time, the person will give way to what he knows is the right answer to what the group says because they all say it out loud. It's like, okay, now this reference line is equal to which other line? A, B, or C? And for example, the group will say, oh, it's obviously B. Okay, B, B, B. And the guy who's not in on it looks around and he's like, God, what's wrong with me? B. Now, some people won't do this. They'll stick by their like, you guys are crazy. I'm the only sane one in the room. But a lot, I don't know if it's a majority, it's a big chunk, it's a huge percentage, will actually just conform to what the group says. That's the hive mind. That's groupthink. That's mass formation psychosis, whatever you want to call it. But the fact checkers are telling us this doesn't even exist. Nor is there any evidence of such phenomenon. There's no evidence of that. I can sit here and pull up a video where Asch is actually conducting his experiment and people are actually falling prey to the group mentality.
But an experiment is not a public opinion poll. It examines behavior under the pressure of social forces, as the experiment of Solomon Asch reveals.
The experiment you'll be taking part in today involves the perception of lengths of lines. As you can see here, I have a number of cards, and on each card there are several lines. Your task is a very simple one. You're to look at the line on the left and determine which of the three lines on the right is equal to it in length. All right, we'll proceed in this order. You'll give your answer.
Only one of the people in the group is a real subject, the fifth person with the white t-shirt. The others are confederates of the experimenter and have been told to give wrong answers on some of the trials. The experiment begins uneventfully as subjects give their judgments.
2. 2.
2,
2.
2, 3,
3.
3,
3.
But on the third trial, something happens.
2, 2,
2.
2,
2.
The subject denies the evidence of his own eyes and yields to group influence.
Group mentality, group think, social conformity, call it whatever you want, mass formation psychosis, mass psychosis, whatever you want to call it. It does exist. And it's demonstrable. You don't have to believe it exists. You can know that it exists. You can go to your grocery store or your bank or the post office, and you can see that everybody's just doing what they're told. That is mass psychosis. They're uncritically conforming to what the authoritized and the experts and mainstream media and government officials actually say because they believe they're officials. And that brings us to another basically conformity experiment, and that's the Stanley Milgram experiment, where a person will actually, because a guy in a lab coat who represents authority says, hey, we got to do this right here, will actually take the life of another human being and actually believe they're taking the life of another human being simply because they didn't do what the authorities said and they didn't follow the rules. And 65% of those, it's just astounding, astonishing, alarming. 65% of those will actually push the button to deliver a 480 volt charge or whatever it was to actually end somebody's life just because they didn't obey what the guy in the lab coat says. Tell me there's not hive mind. Tell me there's not groupthink. Tell me there's not social or uncritical conforming. Tell me that there's no lemming mentality. And by the way, I understand a lot of people give me grief about the lemmings. I just use it because that's a term that people are familiar with. It kind of, brings up a mental picture of, hey, I'm just going to do whatever the crowd does. Hey, the lemmings are jumping off the cliff. I better jump off the cliff too. We all know that in White Wilderness, the producers of Disney, which, produced White Wilderness, we know that the producer was actually spinning those lemmings off on some kind of little lazy Susan contraption and, doing some crafty editing. And we know that lemmings don't actually act like that. But the reason I use lemming is because that's what people identify with. They're familiar with the term. And to actually say what the AP is saying right here is to literally erase. This is an attempt at the erasure of reality. That's what this is. And it is truly astounding and alarming. They say Dr. Robert M, we'll call him. Let me pull it over here. Dr. Robert M, because mainstream media can use his name, but other people can't, other YouTubers can't. A scientist who once researched this technology right here, but is now a vocal skeptic of that use the term on a podcast. That's Joe Rogan's podcast. I will be doing an in-depth analysis on what Malone said on Joe Rogan's podcast in a video on Rockfin, BitChute, and Odyssey. So take a look underneath this video and subscribe to me on Rockfin, BitChute, and Odyssey because there's something we got to talk about with regard to Robert Malone. And it's all in accordance with the facts and the truth, observable truth that anybody can look at themselves and come to the same conclusion with. The phrase does not appear in the American Psychological Association Dictionary of Psychology or the PsychNet database of published research articles, Reuters reports. Dun, 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 because these exact terms do not exist, it must not be a concept. Because right here they said there's no evidence of any such phenomenon. They're not even pinning with mass formation psychosis. They're just saying that kind of phenomenon, that kind of concept, there's no evidence for it. Really? Remember what Mika Brzezinski said on MSLSD? They were getting on to Donald Trump for telling people how to think, and they're like, that's our job. We're the ones here to tell people how they should think.
Well, and I think that the dangerous, edges here are that he's trying to undermine the media, trying to make up his own facts. And it could be that while unemployment and the economy worsens, he could have undermined the messaging so much that he can actually control exactly what people think. And that is our job.
That's called, anybody who buys into that is playing into what Malone referred to as mass formation psychosis, which according to AP and Reuters, the fact checkers, it doesn't exist. Psychology experts say there is no support for the psychosis theory described by Malone. Really? Well, Solomon Asch came up with something different. Gustave Le Bon came up with something different. Stanley Milgram came up with something different. And look at this. To add insult to injury and to put another humorous layer on the cake, check this out. Mass psychogenic illness is found on Wikipedia. We all know about Wikipedia. Look, they say mass psychogenic illness, also called mass sociogenic illness, mass psychogenic disorder, epidemic hysteria, or mass hysteria, and that is another clinical term, if you want to call it that, involves the spread of illness symptoms through a population where there is no infectious agent responsible for that C word right there that I can't mention on this channel. It is the rapid spread of illness signs and symptoms affecting members of a cohesive group, originating from a nervous system disturbance involving excitation, loss, or alteration of function, whereby physical complaints that are exhibited unconsciously have no corresponding organic etiology. So this sounds like, like mass hysteria. This sounds like a level or measure of mass psychosis. This sounds like, mass hypochondria. It's like, man, why am I feeling like this? Well, because there's something called programming. They don't call it television programming for nothing. MPI is distinct from other types of collective delusions. Collective delusions. It's when you check into the cult of personality. It's when you cement yourself into your own cognitive dissonance. It's when you lock the door on your own echo chamber and you only listen to your group and your leader, your master, the person that you're following cannot possibly be wrong. That's a collective delusion. And usually when you're in your echo chamber, you're in there with other people. That's a group. That's the hive mind, groupthink, social conformity, uncritical conformity, lemming mentality, whatever you want to call it. That is the concept that the fact checkers appear to be denying. By involving physical symptoms, according to this right here, mass hysteria is to date a poorly understood condition. Little certainty exists regarding its etiology, and etiology, study of causation or origination. And people have done many experiments on these things. So there are publications that actually say it exists. If you do a Google search on the hive mind, it actually says a notional entity consisting of a large number of people who shared their knowledge or opinions with one another, regarded as producing either uncritical conformity or collective intelligence. That's another way to put it. And then you can look into things called group mind. But what I wanted to end this video with is, if you type in mass formation psychosis in Google, you will get the top stories for the day from Business Insider, The Independent, Forbes, AP News, CNN did a little piece on it. Reuters, fact checkers find no evidence of planned organized partial shutdown, mass formation psychosis. Unfounded theory, used to dismiss bowing down at the altar Jabbo and enriching the pharmaceutical industry. Now, we wouldn't want to do that, but if you type it into DuckDuckGo, it populates with some different choices for you. Look at this. You got way different choices on DuckDuckGo than you do over on the Google. So, according to Solomon Asch, there is such a thing as groupthink. There's also this elevator. They did this elevator experiment where, there are 4 or 5 people who get on the elevator, one person's not in on it, and they face the elevator backwards. And all of a sudden, the guy who's not in on it starts conforming to what everybody does, and he turns to the back of the elevator. for these people to claim that this thing doesn't even exist, says the experts, is truly, truly a marvel to behold. Here's what the AP says. This is part of the article from the AP entitled Fact Focus, Unfounded Theory Used to Dismiss You-Know-What Measures. Here's what they say, just real quickly if I may. An unfounded theory taking root online suggests millions of people have been hypnotized into believing mainstream ideas about you-know-what, including steps to combat it, such as this right here, which is fully endorsed by both Joe Rogan and Dr. Robert M. He endorses this. Matter of fact, 4 of his planks for dealing with the current crisis actually lines up with the group that Teddy Ghebreyesus is involved in that I can't mention on this channel. That's something that I'm serious. Go to the description, BitChute, Odyssey, and Rockfin. Subscribe to me. Follow me over there because I will be doing this an in-depth analysis on the Joe Rogan podcast with Dr. Robert M. And widely shared social media post this week's efforts to combat the dis-ease have been dismissed with just 3 words: mass formation psychosis. And this tweet that got 22,000 views says, I'm not a scientist, but I'm pretty sure healthy people spending hours in line to get a you-know-what is, let's just call it MFP. Let's just call it MFP for short. Not exactly sure when they're going to be censoring this phrase, but we'll just call it MFP. The term gained attention and traction after it was floated by this guy right here on this guy's show, Dr. Robert M., on the Joe Rogan Experience. Malone is a scientist who once researched that kind of technology. Don't you love the way the AP put, you know anything? What's Dr. Robert M's claim to fame? Well, he once researched messenger R.N.A. He just researched it. Didn't have 11 patents on it that were introduced in 1989 or anything. Just he once researched it. That's his level of expertise in this kind of technology, according to the AP. He just once researched it. I bet Malone takes a look at this and just has a huge laugh at it, if he's not in on the entire joke, the entire sick joke. But psychology experts say the concept described by this guy is not supported by evidence and is similar to theories that have long been discredited. Let me show you the theories that they say have long been discredited. The description of mass formation psychosis offered by this guy right here resembles discredited concepts, such as, like what's one of those discredited concepts? Fact checkers at the AP. Mob mentality is a discredited concept. Did you know that? I didn't know that until I read it from the fact checkers. Now I 100% believe it because the fact checkers would never steer me wrong. Fact checkers are not monetarily incentivized by the big farm guy, fake stream media, all the corporate oligarchs, government sources. So I believe them. Mob mentality is a discredited concept, or the group mind. They're saying the AP fact checkers are trying to tell us that the group mind and mob mentality, therefore hive mind and social conformity, are discredited concepts. That doesn't, discredited concepts means, guys, there's no evidence that happens. That's what they're saying. So I had to make this video to talk to you about what the fact checkers, who you can 100% trust. I mean, just completely let your guard down. You can trust them. If they say there's no evidence for this phenomenon, you can take it to the bank. That's something that you can believe. That's something you can sink your teeth into. Give me something to believe in. Oh, fact checkers above. Give me something to believe in. Leave your thoughts about this for the world and the global thought police in the comments section below. If you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell notification icon, give it a thumbs up, share it with everybody you know. Don't forget to subscribe to my private email list through my website, highimpactflix.com. And if you want to support the channel further, grab one of those hard-hitting conversation-starting designs that you can put on a shirt, hoodie, mug, cap, baseball cap, whatever you want to do. I'll see you guys in the next heavily censored shadow ban video. Hey guys, we know with the way things have been going, it can get really interesting really quick. So make sure you and your family have a long-term storable food supply. Support the channel and get $50 off with my link in the description while you still can.